Welcome back to the channel, folks. Today I am sharing 3 books to change your life. So in reading all of these books, I felt a piece of me unlock. And if we're being honest, those are the best kinds of books to really help you unlearn things about yourself, to rebuild other versions of yourself that you didn't even know could be possible. Honestly, this video feels kind of like a tall order, but you kind of have to do what you got to do to get the channel out there. Since the contents of this video are going to be a little more personal, as you know, changing your life can be very, very personal. I'm sharing a little bit more about the books than I normally would in a summary video where I would just talk about the plot points. So you've been warned, spoilers ahead. And if there's a book that's changed your life and that you tend to refer back to every year, please leave that in the comments as well. So this first video I'm going to talk about is Shadows Before Dawn by Teal Swan. I read this book in 2022 and it's got some really amazing exercises to garner love within yourself. Loving our weaknesses, our past, our shortcomings, and loving not in the sense of praising everything about ourselves, but loving for the sake of understanding. This book was written so vividly that I am still left with so many feelings after reviewing all of my notes a year after I read it. I'll share some of the exercises in this book. It told me to stand in front of a mirror alone, undisturbed, for at least 10 minutes. Look as deeply as you can into the reflection of your own eyes. Say what you feel you need. At the time that I chose to do this, I remember crying because I was so proud of being where I was at life, especially after digging so hard to figure out who I was, who I am, who I want to be, and what I would be doing next in life. I also admired the crinkles in my face, the comfort in my posture, and I remember the easiest thing for me to tell myself was, "You've got this." There was a car passing by. It was the most natural thing I could say to myself, and I realized, wow, I should say that to myself more often. And I now do this about once a week. Depending on what I'm feeling, it changes. You know, some days I'll say, "You've got this." Other days I'll just say, "I love you," or "You're enough." Write down a list of what makes you happy, from small to big, and commit to doing at least one of those things every single day. Honestly, sometimes I can't do even one item on that list. But almost every day I read parts of a book, which is why I started a book YouTube channel. And I feel like that's a love letter to myself, to be present in my brain, in my mind, in my body, to just focus on this one thing that's in front of me when the world is constantly demanding of our attention spans. Sometimes I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to read. I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to do my stretching routines. I don't want to do any of that. And sometimes I'll just lie on the floor and allow my thoughts to run through my ceiling in a way that I usually try to push them down because they're too much, in a really ironic way that's grounding to me. And I'll just do that because it feels good in my body. And some days you can't do anything on that list, and that's okay. But to have a reminder of it somewhere, that there's always one thing you can do for a minute that just belongs to you and your joy. Something else the book asks is, what can I do in this moment to move towards happiness? Some days I can't answer this. And in that lack of being able to answer something is the answer, which is to rest, to pause, to take a moment to take care of my immediate needs, like brushing my teeth or closing my eyes for a second. Instead of pursuing happiness, I pursue being in this moment and knowing that this moment is enough. Another thing that this book recommends you doing is list 10 things you'd like other people to stop doing around you or to stop saying to you. How are you violating your own boundaries when you let other people trample over you, when you let other people speak poorly of you? And how does that really make you feel, and what are ways that you can counter and speak up for yourself, take up space in the way that you deserve? We as humans want to be able to communicate our needs, but society sometimes doesn't allow us space to do that. I tend to be the person that has the hard conversations with people, and sometimes that makes people uncomfortable, but I'd rather be honest and hurt people's feelings temporarily so that we can get to a higher level of connection, and more honest level of connection, a connection that is directly related to accountability for your actions and accountability for being a better person. For me, it tends to be being part of the LGBT community and being non-binary in particular, and having to explain 10 times a day that I don't use she, her pronouns. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I have to do that at work. I have to do that within my friend groups. I have to do that within every purchase that I make outside in this world of capitalism. And it's exhausting, but if I didn't do that, I would be dishonoring myself and my identity. A quote from the book that describes exactly this feeling. Boundaries are an imaginary line that uniquely defines and separates your personal happiness, your personal integrity, your personal desires, your personal needs, and therefore, most important, your personal truth from the rest of the universe. And if you don't decide how you want to live, what you want to be, and what you want to do, then someone or something else will decide that for you. And that's just, the world will always try to bend you to its will because there is a rigidity to the world. But we put everybody in boxes, and you're like, you're definitely just this gender, and you're definitely just this racial category, and you are nothing more. You could not possibly be like a dancer, a creator, a writer of any sort. You must be LGBT first, and Filipino first, and I'm an immigrant first. And I'm like, can I just be Melanie first? Like, can I just be me? Other examples of this would be someone at work giving you more work than you're supposed to do because you're always the reliable one, and you're always the type to go above and beyond. And lastly, sometimes the example is a friend that can never seem to set their priorities straight, but also it makes me so concerned for their ability to take up space in the world and live up to their fullest, most authentic selves. I'm going to share one more quote from this book. Your mind is a vessel that is constantly interpreting the world around you. You have to create a level of fortitude so that every comment, every wrong thing that happens doesn't determine you or deter you from living your life, but rather implore you to learn from each occurrence.
And it's in moments like this that we need to learn to shut out the outside noise, the external negativity, and validate ourselves.
So I'll leave you with these questions from Shadows Before Dawn. Do you get more excited about going on vacation more than work? Are you in love with your existence? Are you delighted to be here on Earth at this particular point in time? Do you like where you live? Do you enjoy your relationships? Shadows Before Dawn is very much a dig deep and do the work kind of book. You might not be ready for that, which leaves a very perfect reason to ask yourself, what is holding me back from knowing myself better? I mean, this next book is just like a no-brainer. It's Tomorrow. That's not right. It's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If you haven't heard of this book yet, you're missing out. It is a modern literature work of pure goodness and humanity. And this fictional story is about humanity. It's about the human experience, our desire to pursue success, friendships, love. As far as topics go, it's pretty normal stuff, but it's really the writing, the style of prose that hooks you in, and then you realize you finished a 400-page book in like 2 or 3 days. So this book is foundationally about friendships, which I have a particularity towards because friendships are a foundation of my life, as I mostly grew up around friends and not family. Like, I have my parents, but my brother's in another country, and so are most of my cousins, aunts, and uncles. So friends are my foundation. They are my chosen family. I moved around a lot, so I don't have like the same friend group from junior high and the same friend group from high school and the same friend group from undergrad. They're all like different chunks of people in my life. And so this book is about Sam and Sadie's friendship, how they build a video game together, and it changes their life. During college, Sadie becomes entwined with her professor, whose name is Dov, who she struggles to be able to tell anybody about in her family because of the age difference, because he's a professor, and especially because of family members like her grandmother who say stuff like she has a strong distaste for the gray areas in life. How that relates for me is because I have dated farther in range than a lot of my friends in terms of age difference. I related so much to this part of the story, not being able to share love because it didn't look like what my friends' boyfriends look like and what their girlfriends look like. It was very different. And the other part of it is that this relationship was toxic, and how it really portrays the toxicity you cannot see because you are blind to this person who fills so many other buckets of your love that you need filled. And people won't always understand that that feels good to you. There was this quote in the book where she goes, she saw a future in which Dov was not her lover, but she still might be his colleague, his mentor, his friend. And I have felt these things about the people that I've been with and knew I probably wouldn't end up with for much longer. But it really is in moments like this that the characters feel that much more real, because it's not a traditional story. It's this infatuation with somebody that doesn't make sense but feels something in your soul. Somehow you know it has an endpoint, and that's okay. It's still okay for you to experience it for the sake of experiencing it. Like so many other parts of this book, there was no shame in this experience. And for any of their characteristic hang-ups or their mishaps, it just felt like a deep understanding of what they were feeling in the moment. And the other main character, Sam, he battles with his mixed race identity. He says, perhaps a funny-looking mixed-race kid could exist at the center of the world and not just at its periphery. My interpretation of the symbolism is twofold. It's that representation matters, and the reality of the world being more interconnected means that there will be a lot more mixed-race children in the world. There's something so beautiful in that. The book really captures this feeling of being othered so well in a way that identity-based books do not, because they're focused on like the Asian American experience instead of like just being a kid. Obviously those are still important topics for me. They're like ranges of all the books that I have read, but I think there is like this beauty that this book brings to that particular topic of mixing of cultures and integrating people, because that's just how the world is going to work from now on. Like I mentioned, Sam and Sadie build games together, and they ask each other, why make anything if you don't believe it's going to be great? For me, this quote really spoke to the need of finding a purpose in life. Your purpose gives you a sense for living, a sense for relating to the world, and a sense of doing something selflessly for the world. And if you're going to do it, why not do it well? Sidebar, a book that you should read on finding your path is The Pathless Path, and Ali Abdal made a really great video about it, so I'm going to leave a link here and you should check it out. Obviously, it's a great channel. That's a really great book that I've kind of deconstructed over time in the last year to figure out what I want to do and how I want to spend my time. All things are knowable by anyone, and anything was fixable if you took the time to figure out what was wrong. Really simple quote from a character that really only appears 2 times in the book. It's this idea that anybody can solve a problem, but you have to be patient enough to let things unfold rather than forcing them open. Another quote is that the most successful people are the ones that are the most able to change their mindsets. One of the benefits of reading with such a high exposure to so many different ideas, I am constantly changing my mind about little things and adding layers of knowledge to so many parts of my life. I think that makes me a really pliable person. Pliable, malleable, these are some of like my favorite adjectives for myself lately. Oh, I love this quote. The way to turn a next lover into a friend is to never stop loving them. It's to know that when one phase of a relationship ends, it can transform into something else. It is to acknowledge that love is both constant and a variable at the same time. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do this with a number of my partners, and I would argue it's one of the best skills that you can cultivate, is to transform love, to be able to manifest it into something else into your life. Let go of a previous iteration to go into the next one and never really lose that person. Last quote, I promise. Over the years, the human brain makes an AI version of the person that you have lost. The brain collects your data, and within your brain, you host a visual version of that person. Upon that person's death, your brain still believes that the virtual version of that person is still alive. And I've just been grieving a friend. I hope I keep that memory of him alive, and talking about him and sharing about how he made me feel helps live that memory and that AI version of him live a little bit longer. So there you have it, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. For the sheer beauty of the human experience, this is a no-brainer to read. Last book. This last book is Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. The chaos within this book really spoke to me and affirmed a lot of the observations I tend to make of the world. So if you've heard, watched, or read anything by Anthony Bourdain, you know that there's this insatiable zest for life. Kitchen Confidential is his first nonfiction and first memoir. Anthony Bourdain's way of writing and talking is very stream of consciousness. There's about 5 to 10 things going on within a sentence that you kind of have to decipher and take a little bit of time to really understand what he's trying to say. Overall, though, you get a sense for food, for his adoration for food, culture, people, and in this way, it is a really humanizing book. So he calls New York an incestuous place for food. And if you've ever heard of or been to New York City, you know that the amalgamation of cultures that can truly only exist in that pocket of the world. He talks about good food being about risk and adventure. For me, it really resonated that he saw food as a way to experience living life to our fullest, to recreate ourselves over time, and to do it with good food and with good company. I think Anthony Bourdain being exposed to this level of food and world really leaves one with little to be desired and to crave for when you can have everything that you want at such ease. And I think it really opened me up to the understanding that a fragment of the mental health issues that he was facing. He goes on, he describes observations he makes in restaurants where he felt a comfort in all of the chaos that goes on in a kitchen. How everyone's yelling, trying to avoid someone burning their hand off, people's accents and their mannerisms. He says, "Who are these people in the trenches? You might get the impression, based on my list and career, that online cooks are whacked out moral degenerates, dope fiends, refugees, a thuggish assortment of drunks, sluts, and psychopaths." You wouldn't be too far off base. Each description felt TV script ready, and I felt connected to every trope of person that he described, from the Central Americans who tended to be dishwashers and the maitre d's who were some snooty white guy. He names so many people. It's just really impressive that he has all of this memory and recollection of people with an unimaginable detail of their lives, their mannerisms in the kitchen, their backstory, and so much more than you would expect a former coworker to remember about you. He says this on people who end up in the kitchen, people for whom something in their lives has gone terribly wrong, maybe didn't make it through high school, and they're running away from something, and they're comfortable with the rather relaxed and informal code of the kitchen. They have an elevated level of tolerance for eccentricity, unseemingly personal habits. Can you keep up? Are you ready for service? And I count on you to show up and not let this side down. And on food itself, he said, "I prefer to eat food that tastes good and is an honest reflection of the ingredients. In high cuisine, you pay thousands of dollars for a morsel of food that doesn't even fill you." For me personally, a foodie isn't someone who has tried 100 restaurants. It's someone that has found their favorites and can pick out what is good, but has an understanding of their tastes from a fundamental level of food for food's sake. Your body is not a temple, it's an amusement park. So enjoy the ride. So much of life these days is taking no fun in the food that you make and that you eat, or just eating only for sustenance and not for joy. Which, if that's all that you want food to be, that's fine, but that's not how I want to live my life. And I love that he talks about the communal essence of food. That food is for survival, it is human, and so is making meals together. Having moved away from one of my core communities, I missed getting groceries with my roommates and making a meal just to sit and talk. I miss being able to access fresh ingredients. In reading this book, you see a really high level of descriptions for other people, but you don't really see a lot of self-affirmation for the good things that he's capable of doing himself and the achievements that he's made. You can already tell how hard he is on himself. He's humble, often eccentric, and very dramatic and profane, but firm in his existence and appreciation, adoration, and love prioritizing food. He says, people confuse me, food doesn't. In a timeline where we are faced with infinite choices, to choose is to be able to make decisions, to be able to make certain of some of the variables that are uncontrollable to us in life. So Kitchen Confidential is definitely going to serve as a sort of compass for me in the next years as I figure out what it is I want to do and how it makes me feel. As I figure out like I think I got bit by something. I feel itchy on my face. Anyways, as I figure out who am I crafting in this era of me. And if you stuck around this long, thank you. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.